Good morning, everyone. It's 8:30, so we're going to get started. Thank you for coming this early morning. And my name is Joel Kirshen. I'm a retired educator. I've been a teacher and a principal and a district exec in the LCMS. I'm from San Francisco, California, but I'm here as a board member from Redeemer Redwood City, and my two pastors are here, and thanks to them, they give me the opportunity to dabble a bit at Redeemer, and I try not to get in their way. They're very generous with that, so it allows me to still do some things professionally, which I'm very thankful for. With that said, I want to begin with a question about what do you hope to learn today? Thank you.
I hope I learned that I'm not doing any of the mistakes that you're going to point out.
Well, then you're not going to learn much. Yes?
I hope that I'm trying to get more time out of the week, get more things done.
Okay. Anybody else?
Maybe some validation for things that I think work in 2022, but historically weren't not acceptable.
Okay.
Working from home concepts and things that maybe there's good research on that I don't know enough about.
I'm going to be sharing a lot of research today. Yes.
I just got a little out of balance over COVID, so I'm looking to get
Okay.
research.
Good. Anybody else? If you, well, let me begin by saying this.
There's still empty chairs in here. Overall,
Hi, Kristen. So I have a confession to make, and there's a reason for why I wanted to do the workshop this year, other than just having something to do with my time. I've been a chronic overworker all of my career, and I considered that a badge of honor. Being able to tell people, that I was working 50 or more hours a week was in some way validating to myself that what I was doing and was really significant. And that may have been true. And I thought it was working for me until it didn't. And here are some of the signs that I experienced. Always tired. Always tired. Always working, but not necessarily being productive. Always busy. Always rushing from one activity to another. And one of my biggest problems was always saying yes whenever I was asked to do something. I was a chronic people pleaser. I didn't know how to say no. And I paid a high price for my behavior. In 2010, I had a heart transplant. And I had 5 years of warning before my transplant that this was probably going to be inevitable. And yet, I didn't really change my lifestyle. I thought I could keep the same pace because I was on medication and everything seemed to be going fairly well until, again, it didn't. And the bottom just fell out. and I needed a new heart, and I lost about a year and a half before I could fully go back to work. So I had to pay back all that time that I borrowed. And so one of the reasons I wanted to do this is not so you could learn really how to get more done. And so if that's what you were interested in learning today, how I can get more done, you may be disappointed, because as you can see, the theme of this workshop is not more is better, but less is better. I'm here to try to convince you that working 40 hours a week is plenty if you use your time wisely. All right. I assume everybody in this room is already a high achiever. Or you probably wouldn't be at this conference, and you certainly wouldn't be in this workshop. So I'm not here to give you or to teach you how to give more than you're already giving. And here's what the research says about working more. That knowledge workers, and that's what we are, we work with our minds, not with our hands, produce more and produce it better by focusing on less. Produce more and produce better by focusing on less. That's one of the mindsets I want to share with you today. There'll be a couple of others that I think can have quite an impact on how you're doing at work. All right. So here's the first myth. Do the easy tasks first. I got this productivity tip from an airline magazine in the 90s. And the thinking behind this is that if you do your easy tasks first, you'll build momentum for your hard tasks. Unfortunately, that's not the way your brain works. Every time you do a task, you use up energy that's actually going to make your next task not easier, but harder. So when you do all your easy tasks first, you're likely to use up your prime brain time, and when you get to the hard tasks, your brain is going to be tired, and you're not going to want to do it. You're going to set it aside. So every time you do a task, your energy declines. Just keep that in mind. The second thing is that we have a 3-hour limit. I didn't know this 15, 20 years ago. I thought my brain could work all day long, that I could be as productive at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the afternoon as I was at 8 o'clock in the morning. But research clearly shows that you have 3 to 4 hours before your brain is going to hit, and we'll take a look at this in a little bit, cognitive fatigue. Your brain is going to be tired. And everything you do after that is going to affect both how much you get done and the quality of the work you get done. So you want to get the right stuff done and get it done better. And the way you do this is to prioritize prioritizing. Now, you can't see this very well. You might want to write this down. Put an acronym of URMIND, your mind. U stands for understanding. I stands for, now, why can't I remember this? I can't believe it. This is what happens to your brain when you get nervous. Understanding, recall, memorizing, and the I is for inhibiting, and the small n, so you're doing, and then the D is for decision. So you have understanding, recall, memorizing, inhibiting, and that's NI, and then the D is deciding. So your brain, for a knowledge worker, has 5 functions. And those are the 5 functions that you do every day when you're working.
What was N?
N is the, goes with I. IN for inhibiting.
Got it. Okay.
Now, those five functions are real energy users. Your brain uses 20% of your bodily energy every day. So if you go home tonight and you're really tired, it's because your brain has made you tired. You're not doing anything physically to make you tired, are you? You're tired because your brain has been working all day. It actually takes more energy to be a knowledge worker than it does to be a physical worker. It takes more energy, I should say, to be a knowledge worker than it does to be a physical worker. So you've got 3 hours, and those 3 hours, for almost everybody, unless you're kind of a unicorn, your best 3 hours are going to be in the morning. So I'm going to give you some hints about, or some suggestions about how you can use your morning, but not right now. And prioritizing is important because that last brain function, deciding, of all the 5 functions, that is the most hungry one. That's the one that takes the most decision, or takes the most energy, is to make a decision. Which may cause you to think about, why is it that in the church we have meetings at night when everybody is tired and we're asking them to make decisions? The most hardest thing it is for us to do is to make a decision, and we're asking people to do that at night when their brain is tired and they have very little left over to give. One of the things I really appreciate about Redeemer, I'm on the board there, is we meet on Saturday mornings. And what a difference that makes. And we don't need to meet as often. What do we meet? 6, 7 times a year? We don't meet every month. We can get it done, and we're much more efficient by doing it when our brains are fresh and fully functioning. An interesting word about priority. The word priority came into use in the 14th century, and it stayed singular all the way until the early 20th century, when the word priorities came into use. Now, priority means one. So how do you have 2 priorities? And it's interesting that if you try Googling priorities right now and that word doesn't come up, it's not in the dictionary. There is no plural form officially for priority because there can't be more than one. So the first thing you want to do every day when you get to your desk is to prioritize. What's the most important thing I need to get done today? I call it a win. What's most important now? And that could be a professional task or it could be a personal task. The most important thing for you to get done on some days may be to go to your doctor's appointment. And everything else is secondary to that. And once you get that done, you can go on to what's important now after that one. Okay. Let's do another. Any questions? Let me go back. Any questions about this one? Does that make sense?
Joel,
Yeah.
is that why it's so hard to decide what restaurant you're going to go to at 5 o'clock? You're giving me all kinds of insights now into what's going on in my life.
It has something to do with it. Deciding is really hard. Much harder than we think. Okay.
All kinds of stuff out of it.
On the 3-hour limit, do you have any recommendations on what to do after that 3-hour limit?
Yes.
And then move on? Is that
Yes,
one of the other things?
we're gonna get to that. Yes, because we can't work just 3 or 4 hours a day. I'm encouraging you to work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and however, I know as a pastor you have to move that around a little bit. And you may have a few extra hours or here or there, but that should be your goal. And there will be a real good reason for this. And it's going to have to do with productivity. If you want to be productive, if you want to get more done. How many of you use a productivity app?
You mean besides the calendar?
No, not a calendar. Yeah, besides a calendar.
That's as far as I go.
How's it working for you?
Mixed bag.
Yeah. I've tried probably a half dozen productivity apps, and none of them work for me. They ended up wasting time because I had to invest time in learning how to use the app. And once I found out how to use the app, it couldn't do what was most important for me, and that was to prioritize. I could store all the things I needed to do all day, and I could find fancy ways of manipulating them, but it didn't make the decision for me. And if you don't make this decision, you're not going to have a productive day. You can be busy all day long and still go home and not feel very productive. Has that ever happened to you? Yeah, right? What did I do today? What did I really get done? And you were busy all day long. Jack Nevison, he's the founder of I'm sorry.
It's all good. Happens to us every
Here we go. He's the founder of New Leaf Project Management, and he crunched the number from several studies on long workers, and he found that there's a ceiling, and that's what the rule of 50 is. That after 50 hours, what they found is there's no productivity for the extra time. In fact, it goes backward. One of the studies he examined found that 50 hours on the job only produced about 37 hours of useful work. At 55 hours, it dropped to almost 30 hours. So it's just the opposite of what you think. And it's all because of the 3-hour limit. And also not understanding really how your brain works. So, yes, sir.
Can you just clarify this shortly? The 3-hour limit per day?
Per day.
Per session?
Per day.
Okay.
Per day. I forgot to do something that I wanted to do at the very beginning so that when I reference this it makes more sense. I just want to give you a quick Let me see where I had that. Yeah, back here. I want to give you a quick lesson on brain architecture. The overall architecture of the brain follows one principle. The brain's main priority is to keep us alive. And it sorts everything out from there. Is this a threat to my life, or is this going to improve my life? And we go away from threats and we move toward things that will improve us. If you think of your brain, you can use a hand model as a really good way to remember the main functions of your brain. Your arm right here would be your brain stem. That's right back here. And the brain stem runs 24/7. We are never conscious of what it is doing. It is what runs all the systems of our body. Make sure we're breathing. And you can't make any conscious decisions about this. It's automatic. You can't stop yourself from breathing. Your brain won't let you. The next part of the brain is this part here, and if you put your thumb over like this is what's called the limbic system. And there are three key parts of the limbic system that I'm going to mention today. Over here about is a part of the brain called the basal ganglia, and the basal ganglia is where all of our habits reside. Things that we can do unconsciously. And then over here, there's a part of the brain called the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is what allows us to recall, that's where our memory is. Everything that we can recall goes through the hippocampus. It's not all stored there, but it's like an index. Actually, everything is stored all over our brain. It isn't just in one place. So then if you put your hand over like this, that's kind of how your brain looks. Oh, the other thing that's in here, my thumb is representing, is the amygdala, and that's your emotional center. Again, not all of your emotions are necessarily there, but that's where the center of your emotions are. When you put your hand over here, this is called the neocortex. And it covers the top part of your head. It's a thin layer. And then right in front is called the prefrontal cortex, or the PFC. And that's what, when you are thinking, like right now, you are conscious, that's the part of the mind you're in. You're in your prefrontal cortex. Now, when your brain is operating efficiently, it's like this. But if something begins to mess with your amygdala, like an emotion, it explodes and actually does this: you blow your lid. You've had that experience, right? And what actually happens is your prefrontal cortex gets separated from your amygdala, and so you're no longer in your rational mind. You're completely controlled by your emotions. And that's why we do a lot of stupid stuff when we blow our lid, because we have separated our brain. The connection is broken. There are other things that affect this connection between your PFC and your limbic system that we'll talk about a little bit later, that can also interfere with the connection between your PFC and your ability to recall or even do routines and habits that are in the basal ganglia. And then a little bit about mindfulness. This is a term that's thrown around a lot, and when I first heard about mindfulness, I thought it had something to do with spirituality, but it has nothing to do with that at all. It has to do with your brain, and you're learning to become more mindful today. What mindfulness means to neuroscientists is, the kind of the forerunner in that is a professor down at UCLA called Dan Siegel. He's the one that I learned this hand model of the brain from. And he's kind of he directs a clinic, co-founded a clinic at UCLA a number of years ago on mindfulness. And he actually defines mindfulness as just the opposite of being mindlessness. And mindfulness is just being aware consciously about what's going on in your brain. And when something happens, you go, and you stop and you think about it. You take a pause and say, what's going on? And so the more we know about our brain, the more mindful we become, and the more we can leverage this wonderful gift that God gave us. It is good to keep in mind, if you believe in creation, and we are descendants of Adam, just keep in mind that we have the same brain that Adam had. But did Adam do any of the work that we're doing?
Well, you had to name all those animals.
That's what I thought of too. And after 3 hours, he took a rest. God's the only one who could do it 6 days out of the whole time. Okay, so I had forgotten to do that, so let's get back to where I was, and then some of these things will make a little more sense. So somebody asked, well, what do we do? This is just one of the things I'm going to say. You have to rejuvenate. Your brain needs to rest. Now, your brain never sleeps. You do, but your brain doesn't. Your brain, when you sleep, is actually working and trying to sort out all the stuff you learned during the day and then get it all placed nicely in your brain so that when you wake up, your brain's going to be fully functioning. Does that make sense? I know I'm being a bit simplistic. I'm not a neuroscientist. So your brain needs to rejuvenate, and the first thing that your brain needs every day is 7 to 8 hours of sleep. And that is 7 is about as low as anybody can go and still not be tired all the time. I did not get enough sleep. I operated on about 5 or 6 hours of sleep. I thought I could do that, and I thought it was working. But I was wrong. This practice, we hear this term all the time about time management, right? And productivity apps will encourage you to manage your time. How do you manage time? Can you slow it down? Can you speed it up? Once it's gone, can you go back and get it? You cannot manage time. What you can manage is your energy and what you do with your energy. That's what you can manage. What do I do with my time? And how do I spend the effort that I have? A first century, this has been going on, by the way, for a long time. A first century, a contemporary really of Jesus, a Roman philosopher named Seneca, writes quite a bit about time. And I love one of his quotes, and he says this: life is long if you know how to use it. Just think about that. You're going to be surprised to find out how much time you're wasting. These are other things that need to happen when you rejuvenate. You need to sleep. You need to eat. You need to move every day, exercise in some way. You need to connect with people every day. You should have some play in your life every day. You should have some time to reflect every day, and you should have some time to unplug. If you do that every day, you will find that you have more energy and you'll get more done than you have before. But if you if you steal from any of those things, you're actually stealing from your productivity. Yes, sir.
I've heard before that if we don't get enough sleep, we start forgetting things that we learned several days before.
Sure.
what's the remedy to that?
Get more sleep. I don't mean to be disrespectful. The only thing we can do is get more sleep.
So I think about what you said earlier about unless we're unicorn, the morning time is usually our best.
Yes.
How does that equate to a teenager?
That actually is being asked in a lot of high schools today, whether the timing for high schools, because teenagers, your sleep pattern changes as you get older. So let me just put it that way. So we're talking about adults, not teenagers. Yes, their sleep cycle's a little different. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Yes, sir.
When you say sleep, does it include nap? Because nap disturbs my sleep in the night.
The 7 or 8 hours of sleep at night. Yes, sir.
To help emphasize your point, the military for pilots have enforced a mandatory 8 hours of sleep prior to flight, uninterrupted. They're
Yep.
not allowed to be disturbed at all. If they do get disturbed, they cannot fly the next day.
Thank you for that.
Makes no sense because I drove the big ship, which cost me many, many more millions of dollars. For anything. Go figure.
You can, as I did, you can push this 50-hour, the rule of 50. You can push this, and I'm sure some of you do. But there will be a cost.
Joel,
Yes.
did you stumble across the 4 10-hour workday is becoming a popular thing? So would you say is there research on that is more efficient, less efficient?
I haven't seen any research on that, but if you're going to work a 10-hour day, you're going to have to do something during that. Well, hang on to that thought. So, because I'm going to get to answer the question that came from back here. If you only have 3 or 4 hours, what do you do for the afternoon? So, how do you make sure you have a productive afternoon? And I will get to that. Okay. So here's the next one. Is you want to stay busy all of the time. And that the busier you are, the more you're going to get done. So the first one I've already talked a little bit about, the cognitive fatigue. If you continue to work when your brain is tired, you're going to find that your creativity, your production, and your quality of your work is going to suffer. And this is because cognitive fatigue disrupts this connection between your PFC and your hippocampus. When you're tired, that connection just isn't as good. That's also true when you're really anxious. The connection isn't as good. Have any of you had an argument, with someone you love and tried to do work afterwards? It's impossible, isn't it? That's because your brain is separated. That emotional upset separated your PFC from your limbic system. And as hard as you try, you just can't get anything done. And it's trying harder doesn't help. What helps is quitting. In his book, white space. One more thing. White space is what you create in your brain when you stop. And you stop working, you create some white space. And you want to create white space in your brain during your workday periodically. Just one hint on this. For instance, say you start working on a project and you're starting about 8:30 in the morning or something, and you finish the project maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours later. Before going on to your next project, you need to create some white space for your brain. and you need to take 10 or 15 minutes to give it a break. And don't do, when you give your brain a break like that, try to do something that isn't cognitively demanding. That might be a good time to just get up, walk around a little bit, say hi to a few people, maybe take a snack or something like that. But it'll help you regain energy for the next task you're going to do. So try to create some white space in your day. As to what you do to the afternoon, you've got to find a way to rest. That's the best thing. Some of the highest and most productive people in the world are daily nappers. Thomas Edison is probably the most famous of them all, a daily napper. Sleep is the best way to rejuvenate your brain. And you can get a pretty good rejuvenation with just 15 to 20 minutes of a nap. I have a little trick that I use. I didn't become a napper until just a couple of years ago when I started learning some of this stuff. If you have a cup of coffee right before you lay down, caffeine takes about 20 minutes to kick in. You'll wake up and you'll have a nice little caffeine boost too.
Called that a nappuccino.
Pardon me?
It's called the nappuccino.
Is that right?
Nappuccino.
I hadn't heard that. That's cute. That's cute. Yeah, it really works. Now, I know that for some of you, napping isn't going to be acceptable. Where you work or whatever, people aren't going to understand why you're taking a nap and everybody else isn't. The other thing is that nap is going to be much more effective if you can lay down and darken the room. So there is an alternative, and that's to move. So when you get past your 3 or 4 hour and you go into that trough time, instead of trying to push through your work when you're really tired, if you can't nap, get up and take a walk. And the best place to take a walk is outside, and the best place to be outside is in nature. Walking where there are more trees than there are cars or people is gonna give your brain the best rejuvenation. Walking is really good for your brain. And you can take advantage of this in a number of ways. There was a really interesting study done at Stanford. Researchers at Stanford found that participants were twice as creative when they walked than when they sat. And what they were trying to create in this experiment was how many ways can you use a key? And to be creative, they had to make sure that use was both appropriate and novel and appropriate. And what they found is that participants were twice, I think I said this, twice as creative when they were walking than when they were sitting, and they were walking on a treadmill in a windowless room. They weren't even walking outside, and yet walking had that effect on them. The way I use these two for myself is that when I'm tired, and I take a nap, and that's just one time a day. It usually happens around 1 o'clock. It's pretty routine for me. One of my dogs even knows, because when he sees me walk to my room at 1 o'clock, he walks along with me and gets in his little thing, and he takes a nap too. It's pretty cute. The other thing is when I hit an impasse. And an impasse is just when you're working on something and you're stuck. You might be looking at your screen and you just can't think of what do I need to write next, and you try and nothing kind of works. Pushing harder isn't going to help you. That's a sign that's probably a good idea to get up and move. I like to walk outside when I move, and then I can take my dog with me. And what I find is that if you just calm your mind down when you're walking, you'll find that your mind will produce some really great insights for you on the work you are doing. And when you get back, you'll get past your impasse. You'll probably think of the solution on your walk. I've had that happen a number of times. Not all of those are always great, but many of them are at least further than I was before, where I didn't have any idea what I went. But after I took a walk and I let my brain calm down and think and do its work inside that I'm not even conscious of, it produced an insight for me.
So you listen to anything when you walk?
Yeah.
Or completely just
And I take a casual walk. Yeah, no, I pretty much just look down. I pretty much walk looking down. And it's a casual walk. I'm just out there to give my brain some white space to recuperate. And the muscles in our legs activate our brain. How many of you stand when, I know Corey has a stand-up desk, right? You do too? Yeah. Is that working pretty well? Yeah, that's why.
So in terms of the pastors in the room, one of the professors at seminary always talks about when he does a verbal composition of his sermons, he always does it while walking. So he does his whole sermon while walking, verbally composes it, and then goes and writes it down.
I'm not surprised. Not surprised at all. Another thing you could do in the afternoon is if you have a meeting in the afternoon with just one person or something, is walk during the meeting. Let's just take a 10-minute walk as we start going, and you'll find that will also be more productive than sitting down and trying to fight through your tiredness. Because remember, when you're tired, this is what happens. We start to separate. Okay. Next myth. All work has the same value. This is what will keep you really, really busy. How many of you work from a to-do list? Yeah, everybody, right? How many of you prioritize your to-do list in the morning? Good. Some of you already do that. This is a tool actually developed by General Eisenhower that he used to help him do his priorities, and you can use it too. And you say that's not important, urgent, not urgent, and so forth. And you go through your to-do list, and quadrant 1 goes everything that is both important and urgent. Those are going to be what I call wins, right? What's important now? So I look at my to-do list, and I've got to find one of those things is the most important thing for me to do now. And it should be something difficult. That's when you want to do your hard work. The second one is that it's important, but it's not urgent. The third one is the trickiest one. And what I mean, by the way, by not urgent is that I might not get it done today, but it's okay because I still have tomorrow or the next day to work on it. Urgent is I got to get it done today. But the third one is the one that's really tricky for us, especially. I found this one difficult because I was a people pleaser. And square number 3 is work that's important to somebody else but not to you. And this is, if you say yes to this, this is a mindset that may help you. If you say yes to this, what are you going to say no to? Because you've only got so much time. If I say yes to this task and I'm going to work on that, what am I going to trade off in number 1 and number 2 to do number 3? Am I making sense? Because you're going to have to trade off something. If you work on this first, you're going to lose something up in 1 and 2. I guarantee it. Unless it's something that you can get done real quickly. So if somebody just needs, something that's going to take you 5 or 6 minutes, 10 minutes, you get it out of the way and you do it. Here are some things to think about when you're doing number 3. The first one, if I say yes, what are you putting in quadrant 1 and 2 at risk? What are you willing to trade off to accommodate this quadrant 3 request? And then the other thing is, will you end up resenting your participation in it or the other person? So you want to think about that. And if you review these questions and you still feel like you're giving up, that giving up your time is a good idea, then go for it and get it done as quickly as possible. Am I making sense about what number 3 is and why that's so difficult?
That's like a culture setter for your organization too, right? If you're a senior leader and you function this way, you're going to have to tell people, hey, that's a you thing. I'm not working on that. I don't need to be in that meeting.
Yep.
That type of thing.
Yep. Yes.
So advice for, I feel like it's a combination, but the procrastinator who, and the person who's putting out a lot of fires, so they kind of, this important thing lives over in non-urgent for a while, and then suddenly, bam, it goes into the urgent, and then you're working 50 hours to get it done.
Yeah, and you may get it done, but it may not be your best work.
Right.
Yeah. Let's see, a thought crossed my mind and then it just went right. I'll find it. It'll come back. Maybe not till tonight, but it'll come back.
We have a saying for that. Poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine.
Yeah.
And we generally dismiss that quick. It's like, oh, this has to get done now. Like, okay, can't do anything for you. I've got my own priorities, and let them slide. Eventually the burn will catch up and they'll learn to either plan ahead or ask for help earlier.
Some of us are good at saying that, and some of us, when we're people pleasers, just can't do that. We don't know how to say no. And everybody needs to find a way, 2 or 3 ways, to gracefully say no. And in that case, it might be, geez, I'd love to help you with this, but I can't help you right now, but I have some time this afternoon that I could meet with you. It's as simple as that.
I'll often say at meetings, people have great ideas if I do the work for them. And it's not something where you restate what your job description is, and then you steer them to where they can get it done if they want to pursue it.
Yeah.
I remember I learned how to prioritize from you years ago when you said everything is important. I mean, in church work and ministry, everything's important. The most urgent is what needs to get done first, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Of this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Number 4 is also an important one for you. Those that are not urgent and they're not important, but they're tasks that need to be done. What you should try to do with those is delegate them to somebody else. They may not be important to you, they may not be in your wheelhouse, but somebody in your organization, it is important to them and it is in their wheelhouse, and they will do it. Learning how to delegate, if you want to use your time right, is very good. One of the biggest thieves of time that I struggled with is that nobody can do it as well as I can. And so I didn't delegate anything because it had to be done the way I wanted it done. I got that from my mother. There were two ways to do things: learner's way and the wrong way. Yes?
How do you not turn delegating 4s into turning that into a 3 for someone else? Because you mentioned how 3 is, it's important to someone else, maybe not to you.
And what do you do?
Because you mentioned what?
Say that again.
So you mentioned how a 3 is, it's important to someone else, but not necessarily to you. How would my delegating a 4 not turn into a 3 for someone else?
Well, you just have to ask, can you do this for me? And it may be your administrative assistant. Yeah. Is that he or she can do it just as well as you can, so why should you do it? If you've got 1 and 2 work to do, right?
No, I don't disagree at that point. But from my standpoint,
Yeah.
I mean, what about their 1 and 2? Like, you see, like.
Yeah, and they may say no. Yeah, they may say no. Okay. This one, I couldn't come up with a myth. So I apologize for that. So it's really 6 myths and 1 suggestion. And this has to do with distractions, and a distraction that affects a lot of church workers is they have an open door policy. They're available all the time. Not a good idea. And I'll give you a hint on what you can take that. That somehow you need to be available 24/7, and anybody can text you at any time and expect you to return it. There are times, of course, when there are emergencies and none of this applies. A lot of this doesn't apply to your family as well. If your wife asks you to do something and it's a number 3, I do it. If it's important to her, it's important to me. I've learned that. Yes. The other thing is external distractions, and this one has always been a tough one for me too. When you're in, researchers at Princeton Neuroscience Institute found that when your environment is cluttered, your ability to process information goes down. They go on to say that an uncluttered, organized, and serene environment increases your focus and your ability to do what's called deep work, where you really have to focus. So if you really want to focus, you clear off your desk and you get that one thing on your desk that you want to work on. Anything, when you hit an impasse or you get a little tired, your mind is immediately going to try and take a break. So it will look for a distraction, because if it gets distracted, it can rest. Your brain is trying to save energy all the time. So if you have anything around to distract you, it probably will. And you'll look up and you'll see a picture of your family and you'll go down memory lane for the next 5 minutes in your mind as you take a break.
How do you prevent the decluttering itself from becoming a distraction or procrastinating from something though?
I'm not sure how to answer that, but this you came up with the word that made me think is procrastination is what I wanted to talk about. If you're procrastinating, it's a sign your brain is tired. It's too tired to move on, to make a decision. Just take a break. If you go out and move, take a little nap, whatever it is, and go back and see if you can get started on it. But it is a sign of a tired brain.
I have a suggestion for that one. At the end of the work day before you leave, clean the desk, and then it's prepare for the 3 hours when you're the most alert to get there in the morning.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I'm saying I'm running out of time here, but we're almost done. And internal distractions are distractions that just happen inside you where your mind switches channels and goes to something else, and it just gets distracted. And again, that happens usually when you hit an impasse in your work. I want to get to this last one. Planning is a waste of time. How many of you work at churches and schools without a strategic plan?
Working on it.
I'll put my hand up. We say we've got one all the time, but
I'm not sure why it is, but churches seem to have a hard time with planning. How often do you review your strategic plan to make sure that you're on track with it?
We tried to do a review, but then the pandemic happened. So we haven't
Yeah.
finished our review.
A lot of strategic plans end up in a 3-ring binder on your shelf for both schools and churches, and they're not reviewed on a regular basis. In my next session, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I have this suspicion that the reason churches don't plan very much is that they have an either-or view about how God works in our life. They either believe that God completely controls our life, so there's no real point in planning because God's in control, so why should I plan? That's where the Jewish saying, while man plans, God laughs. That's where that comes from. Or they don't believe God is involved in our life at all, that everything we do is a free choice. And like many things in the Bible, it's not an either or, it's a both and. God is both in control of our lives, and we have the freedom to make any choice we want to make. But somehow, those two things come together so that we have a freedom of choice, and God is still in our plan, in our life. That probably doesn't make sense, but theologically, the name for that is called concurrence. And that came from Jesus' death was planned from the beginning, and yet the people who killed him, this was an Acts, were still responsible. That's concurrence. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, I want to talk to you a little bit about the planning system that I recommend for churches and schools. And in our next session, we're gonna talk about OKRs. But a good plan starts out with a vision. Actually, it starts out with a mission. Generally speaking, if I'm helping someone, I don't mess around with their mission statement very often. So it's mission and then vision. And then we create OKRs for a vision statement. I like using statements more than a narrative because they're clearer. Here's one thing you want to understand about your brain. Your brain is a planning machine. God commanded us to be fruitful. Jesus commanded us to be fruitful. They wouldn't have commanded us to do that if they didn't think it was possible. We are created to be fruitful. We are created to plan. Your brain loves goals. It loves to plan. It has a way to reward you. Every time you accomplish something on your plan, your brain gives you a shot of dopamine. It's a neurochemical that makes you feel good. And it rewards you so that the more you do, and this is God's way of pushing you forward. What your brain doesn't want is it won't walk into a fog. Your goal needs to be clear. The most important thing about a goal is that it be clear so that your brain knows this is where we're going. It's important that you write your goals down, because that act of writing actually connects with the physical act of writing connects with your brain and helps embed that in your brain. And once that goal is embedded in your brain, your inner voice will remind you that that goal hasn't been accomplished until it is. It will remind you, don't forget about that. Don't forget about that. Don't forget about that. It'll keep telling you until you do it. All we have to do is make sure we can leverage that planning part of our mind. So if you want to accomplish something, write a goal. And that's why I've designed a daily planner. I can pass this, or you can come up and look at it if any of you. Oh, this is my daily planner. I'll send this to you if you want, and you can just run these off. The daily planner doesn't have any dates on this because I don't use this every day, because some days don't need any planning because I'm not going to do anything. I'm retired. But that's probably true for you too. If your day is mostly meetings, you really don't need to fill those out. And this works really well with like Google Calendar or something like that. There's a space in here for appointments, and you can either write them down here so that it's in front of you. I suggest you put this in a 3-ring binder, and you do keep that open and on your desk so that you know this is what I need to do today. I would put in that 3-year binder my OKRs as well as my vision statements, so every morning when I get up and I look at my planner, it reminds my brain about why I'm here.
What's an OKR?
And OKR stands for objectives and key results. It's a way to do planning. I'm talking about that at the 10 o'clock one if you're interested. So there are some things on here. I also encourage people to do what I call a life plan. This is a life plan with a 10-year vision, and it's just different areas of my life of where I hope to be in 10 years from now, with my family, spiritual, health, career, friends. And then there's a little one up here that says, how would your family and tribes describe you at this time in your life? This is the second step. The first step in doing a life plan is to write your obituary. What do you want people to say about you when you die? How do you want to be remembered? Writing that obituary can be a real moving experience. And what I recommend that you do when you write your obituary is that you get in contact with some of your closest friends, and you just ask them, what do you most appreciate about me? And it'll give you some idea of how you want to be remembered. I like to think about it, do I want people to come to my funeral and celebrate my life? Or to be glad I'm gone? This is a daily planner. It has on here for you to check off. This is give you a little dopamine hit. There's all kinds of things. I've reviewed my life plan. I've reviewed my OKRs, and then you can put your date on there if you want to. And then it has a place here. I recommend no more than 3 wins a day, and you prioritize them. You put secondary tasks down here. You might get to them, you might not, but this is probably stuff you're going to do in the afternoon. Your appointments can be here today. I would put things I get to enjoy today. Everybody needs some play in their life, so make sure you plan that. I really like 3 people I thanked today. If you're a leader, one of the most powerful things you can do for the people you lead is to thank them for what they've done for you. And you'll find that this is really a powerful thing to do. Try and thank 3 people a day. Just letting them know that you appreciate them. And you'll find that'll be a real boon for your leadership. People will really respond to that. And I also have a thing on here of things I won't do today. And that may be, for some of you, no social media today. No social media during work. I'm not going to do that. The other part is the thing I call a weekly reset, and this is close to what you were saying, is that at the beginning of each week on Sunday evening sometime, you fill out this sheet, and it starts with contributions from the previous week, an action review on your 3 wins, and you just, whether they are red, yellow, or green. Green if you accomplish them, yellow you still have work to do, red you never even got started on it. You're still back at the beginning. A little bit on what worked, what didn't work for the week, what will you keep, improve, start, or stop doing based on the above. You do a list sweep going through your notes and other things to make sure you gather for planning all the things you got to do next week. You fill in the back with that as well. And then you try the night before you go to work is to pick your 3 wins for the week. What are 3 things that I need to get done this week to make this a productive week? What are the 3 most important things? Does that make sense? And you would keep this in your binder as well. Yes, sir.
There's 2 books that come to mind in this whole presentation. I think these are probably, it's almost mirroring what you're talking about. The first one is called The One Thing.
I haven't heard about that one.
That one is identical to what you're saying, and they have great podcasts go along with it. His audio book is really good. But The One Thing, but I think probably the one that really shifted me, probably about 7-8 months ago, was a book called The Road Less Stupid. Which it sounds funny, but it's like I said, it's just right alongside what you're saying.
Yeah, I got a lot of this. The basic structure for all of the productivity stuff is basically based on a man named David Allen. And he's kind of the productivity guru of almost everything today in productivity comes from David Allen. His system is really complicated. I actually had a productivity app that was related to it. It just didn't work for me. It was just too complicated. So I tried to get something that was simple enough for me to understand.
You said.
Yes, sir. Yes, Matt.
Okay, so how do you build in, so you said your wife gives you a 3 to do, and you didn't have that in your plan. So where do you build that in? Do you know what I'm saying?
You're going to have to do a trade-off.
Okay.
It all comes down, it really comes down to this time thing, unless you've got some time built into your day that you've already built in free time. Let me say this, and we need to stop. At the beginning of the week, I would take an empty calendar. You could put it on your weekly reset into opinions or into appointments. You could put it here. Look at your calendar and divide your week into 3 buckets. People time, face time, and alone time. Make sure you schedule every day some alone time. Try and get that in the morning. People time is when you're going to have an open door policy. You're going to be, I'm available. You can tell your admin, if somebody calls, I'm available for a call. If you get a text, you can return it. If you get an email, you can return it. It's time you set aside just for people. And it may end up being pretty free, and you can do some other things during that time. And the other time I call face time. And face time is meeting time, and those are the meetings. You block those out. So you've got these 3 buckets, and make sure that you've got time for each one of them, and it'll help you organize your week. Yes, sir.
So you said 7 myths, and that one of them isn't a myth; it's distraction.
Yeah.
What is the 7th one? You had planning is a waste of time.
Planning is a waste of time.
That's the 7th one.
Yeah.
I feel like we're still missing one. Is it this what's on your mind, or?
No. Let's see, planning is a waste of time is 1, distractions is 2, all the work has the same value as 3, stay busy is 4, the longer I work is 5, Do the easy task first is 6, and multitasking is 7.
Multitasking. We haven't done multitasking.
Oh, we didn't do multitasking. Oh my gosh. I can't leave you. How did I forget that? Okay, real quickly, multitasking. Here's the bottom line, you can't do it. We don't have to spend a lot of time in this. Neuroscientists have a word for it. It's called dual task interference. Your mind can only focus on one thing at a time. It cannot focus on two things. There is a caveat for that. For all you women sitting in here, I multitask all the time. There is a way you can multitask, but it's probably different than you think, and you're multitasking more than you know. So let me run through these quickly. What your brain does is it switches from one task to another. When you're trying to do two things at the same time, you focus on this one and you move to this one, your brain has to switch. When it switches, it keeps some of what you switch from with you. So you go over there and part of your attention is still back on this task while you're trying to do this task. And when you go back, the same thing happens again. Part of you is left with the email you answered while you're going back to writing your sermon. And what research has found is that it can take up to 25 minutes once you switch from one task to another to get back to the same place you were before. It can be really costly to switch tasks. That's why you set aside time where you are not going to be interrupted by a text. Turn your phone off, get it out of the room. Here's some interesting things about your phone. You are multitasking all the time if you have your phone with you. Your phone is addictive, and if you don't know that, you're kidding yourself. It was designed to be addictive. Every time you respond when your phone says you have a message or anything else, you reward your brain with dopamine. So you're rewarding yourself for doing the wrong thing. Research found that the closer your phone, if you put your phone in another room, your productivity went up. If you put your phone in a bag next to you, your productivity went up. If you just put your phone, got it so it's away from you, is going to be best, because if your phone is with you, you are multitasking. Part of you is always going to, every time that phone dings, you're going to switch tasks. Does that make sense? Don't take it with you in meetings. If you go to your phone during a meeting, you'll miss what was said. It's really embarrassing when that happens.
Apple actually has an interesting solution to this.
Focus.
Probably a phone maker.
Yeah.
They have the focus
Yep.
kind of setting now, where you can set a focus and your phone will ignore everything else other than what your focus is set to.
Yeah.
It works across their computers
Yep.
as well.
Yep. The phone, this one guy called it at Google, he called it a slot machine in your pocket. You can't resist taking it for a spin every few minutes. I thought here's the one on embedded routines. If you've got a routine that you've done over and over and it's in your basal ganglia, here's probably one of the best illustration I can give you. Have you ever gotten home after work and you drive in the driveway and you can't remember that you even drove home? You were multitasking, and your basal ganglia got you home. So you can multitask if one of the things you're doing is a routine or a habit. You can multitask. I could rehearse this speech while I'm washing dishes. I can do both. So if it's an embedded routine, you can multitask. And for some reason, it seems like women have more routines than men have. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is just one more thing. And that's on the daily planner sheet, is that and if you contact me, I'll give you more information on this. You design a morning ritual, a startup ritual, a shutdown ritual, and that shutdown ritual would be clean your desk, make sure everything is off so when you get there in the morning, and then an evening ritual. I can send you some information on that. My email address was on there, jkirshen at gmail.com. If you'd like the planners or anything, just send me an email and I'll send you a copy of it, and you can run off as many as you need. If there's anything else from today that you'd like some follow-up on, don't hesitate to contact me. I'd be happy to tell you. Thank you so much. I gotta go. The other presenter, or no, I'm the other presenter.
You gotta rest your brain a little bit. Yeah, you need some white space. I need a nap.
Thank you all very much for your patience.
So now